What is poppin'? What's cracking? What's shaking? Hold on. I'm getting a little bit of delay. There it is. Boom. Got it. No more delay. But yeah, what's cracking? What's poppin'? What's shaking, everybody? Today is Thursday, if you haven't noticed. And we're doing our show a little early. It's a special edition. Not really special. We just have stuff to do on Friday. So we
It's
thought
special.
we thought that we would move it up a day early. So thank y'all for tuning in if you are live, and thank y'all for tuning in if y'all are watching post live. What is that even called? Just is that like
Just
it's not
watching,
a rerun. It's just watching the stream. Thank
catching
y'all.
up.
Yes, for catching up on the stream. So, Grace, what up? What's cracking?
How are you? I'm freezing. So if you guys hear like the snifflies, it's like what? Like earlier this morning it was like 40, 30 something.
Oh
We're in
yeah.
California.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable.
No, 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 no. Like, say when it comes down to just the last few days, like even last night, like I was told it was 38 degrees out, and I was like, really? It was Super Bowl Sunday not too long ago, and it was quote on quote record breaking as far as the heat that they were having for the Super Bowl, but we just got a crazy, crazy cold front. So, yeah,
It's
not
supposed to get hot next week too. So
yeah.
it's just everywhere. But I'm good. I'm excited for this episode.
Oh
We kind of
yeah.
had like a little Peacemaker just finished up.
Mhm.
Batman doesn't come out until next week. So I'm super excited about today's topic because I think it just kind of meshes perfectly with the schedule and I'm super
Mhm.
excited.
Perfect. So, uh, being that she already said the keyword, aka Batman, I found a cool little background with Batman looking towards the bat signal. So that's gonna be our background today.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So, as far as what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be not only just talking about kind of predictions of what's to come in the new Batman film, but we kind of want to dive into previous Batman films, shows, comics. We're today is everything Batman. Grace came up with the title. She said the many faces of Batman. So that's what we're talking about. So without further ado, Grace, if you could just go ahead and pop this thing off.
Let's do it. So kind of in preparation of like the new Batman film, I, was evidently excited because it seems like it's going to be very broody, very gloomy, very tailored to what we expect from Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wanted to take it back from just like first appearance on screen and forward because I think it highlights just why this is such an exciting film coming out, especially with like the pre expectations that are set not just by like the trailers but also just comments from like directors and writers about what this film is going to be about or what
Mm-hmm.
it's based on. So let's go ahead and get started with I'm pulling it up the 40s,
Okay.
which is the inception of Batman, not just in the films, because I didn't come into the 50s, but just the creation real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the creation of Batman is important to just kind of explain because I think it sets the pace for everything else we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So the creator of Batman is, hold on, oh, where are my notes all over the place? Found it right here. Okay, so Bob Kane is the one that's credited for creating Batman, especially what we envision Batman to be. And in its birth, the goal was to give something that was very gloomy. Pretty much the goal or like the project that was given to Bob Kane was to create a character that essentially complemented Superman, right? Because that was the first
Mm.
superhero, not just for like DC, but really the first superhero in its like modern day sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And Superman was is very like just in terms of color scheme, very opposite of Batman, and that's exactly what they were shooting for. What better way to kind of highlight Superman and Batman's like both like good and bad characteristics than have something that's very like contrasted, right?
Right.
So Batman, of course, is still a superhero, but he's more grounded in like the reality and the real and the humanity of it all.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we got comics, that's kind of what we were getting. The first time we ever saw Batman on screen, go ahead and put those up. I did send over, I think it's like one of the comic, or not comics, I'm sorry, but one of like the posters for like
Mm-hmm.
the showings. This was back in 1943. So we had Lewis Wilson portraying Batman the first
Hold
time
on.
live
Hold
action.
on.
Yes.
Pardon. I have Adam West up. So let me
Oh,
bring
just
up
kidding.
the
I
black and
know, you're
West.
right.
No, 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 no. Did you want the black and white image up? Because I have the black and white image up. But initially, I had the one in color with Adam West
Oh,
and
okay. No,
Burt
yeah,
Ward.
yeah, 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 yeah. Let me double check. Double check. I want to make sure I'm not getting the names confused. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Yes, we want to be seeing Lewis Wilson up
I
first.
got
Yeah,
you.
that's the
I
one.
got you. Yep, he's
There you
up.
go.
He's up right there, right in the center.
So this is the first appearance that we got of Batman on screen, and I think the ways that these were being viewed was like it was a weekly showcase, and I think the clips were only maybe like 20 minutes long. And of course, like the old school shows, it's kind of like the left on a cliffhanger. You got to go in the next Saturday, watch it again, and you keep doing it. So that's
Right.
kind of like at this point retro, right? Because we got into this era of like binge watching now, and then it's really something that's kind of newly being brought in. Like the one I can first remember doing this was The Mandalorian, right? You
Uh-huh.
had to watch the following week, and it kind of created some of that original hype of like what we do, right? Like the what's the word, like guessing the like theories and all these things,
Right.
which makes I
Right.
think the nerdum so exciting. So that's kind of how it was set up when this was aired, and it was really trying to match that dark and broody original themes that were brought in, at the birth of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
However, this is where things kind of changed, right? It's a history lesson. I got really
Look at
excited,
you.
and my deep dive just basically went into all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of go into. So I've heard of this before, and I was kind of reading into a little bit deeper because I couldn't remember all of the details. But are you familiar with like the psychiatrist who basically threatened the future of comics? Are you aware of this history?
No. No, I've never heard of that.
Oh, buckle
Oh,
down.
snap.
So, okay. So I've read several books. There's one called the what is it called? The Physics of Superheroes, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool because it's basically a book that teaches you physics, but it gives you like comic book examples. This is the first time that I had been aware of this like historic thing in the comics, or that happened in the history of comics, which was in the 1950s. There was a psychiatrist by the name of Frederick Wortham who made a book called The Seduction of Innocent. And essentially, it blamed the comics for absolutely everything wrong in the world. So let me just quote Stan Lee. He basically, like, explaining what the book did, it basically blamed comic books, or said comic books were responsible for every ill that man and flesh are heired to. And some of the things it suggested, or that this psychiatrist suggested, was that comic books caused asthma, that comic books was basically the leading cause of juvenile delinquency. And so all of these things created such a ruckus that there were even like congressional hearings about it. So it got big.
Wow.
It got very huge. And from here forward, what happened is this is where we get the Comic Book Magazine Association of America. So I know you guys have seen this. It's that little square thing that says approved by the Comics Code Authority. I'm sure you've seen it on like the comic books. It's like on a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is basically the organization that essentially filtered all the comics before they were essentially sent to the publishers, because with this era and everyone's basically like shielding their children from these comics, publishers were no longer like pushing out these so-called troublesome content, right?
Right.
So in this
Right.
era is essentially where I believe it was like the writers of the comics started to feel restricted, right? Because they had a lot of limitations when it came to the comics, and especially with characters like Batman, where their foundation is very much dark and broody and psychological. So during this time, I mean, Batman had to survive somehow. So they kind of went into the fantastic. I guess there's a lot more involvements of like aliens in the storylines and just like crazy sci-fi type things, just
What?
because it was something that I know it's like it doesn't make sense in the world of Batman, but it was really the only way to keep it alive. But like readers were, we talked about this before, like story always has to come before like the action and the fantastic. Otherwise it just doesn't last, right? The MCU is such a great example of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so evidently like the readers were getting
Oh,
bored, but
definitely.
yeah, absolutely. And this is where Q, Adam
Adam West.
West,
Boom.
yes,
There he is.
this is where the show launched. So the show, although it was very like kitschy and what's the word? Cartoony and campy. That's the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Campy. It kind of kept, you know, Batman alive for the next few years up until um we kind of went into this new era of like maturity in the comics, and this basically started like in the 70s and 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and it is, you know, pretty much like comic book fans got older, we're like in the teens, early adulthood, and so evidently like the comics had to shift, they had to transform, they had to be more mature. So this is where writers were able to start becoming a little bit more creative in what stories they were telling. They were able to go back into the roots of Batman and really focus on the psychology of him, which is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we've had a lot of conversations about just the characters, that's something we look at. Peacemaker is
Right.
a it's definitely one we dove deep on. And so here, this is where we start to see essentially what we envision Batman, like the dark, the broody, all of that. This is where we first get
Wait.
like the Tim Burton.
Wait.
Yes.
Like before we even go further, I just want to kind of dive into like just the whole idea of the Adam West Batman. Just
Mm-hmm.
because this show, even though I wasn't born at this time, I can imagine it to be, like you said, cartoony slash campy. But at the end of the day, during the time, this was groundbreaking, you know. And yes, they had like some black and white shows of like the Batman that we mentioned previously, and even Superman. But like, say here, this is where, of course, like Batman out of all the superheroes is, I'm gonna say, the most human, you know, and this is where we start to get different aspects of the superhero and its physicality, and I remember seeing this documentary. It wasn't a Batman documentary, but like me being a huge Bruce Lee fan, right? There was a moment, like even in the show, to where they had like a crossover event with like the Batman and the Green Hornet, and the Green Hornet is not like I don't believe it to be necessarily like a comic book, but it was a show back then, so it was like a TV crossover event to where Bruce Lee was almost kind of fighting alongside with Batman and Robin. So like even back then, it's like we're starting to now, especially in that, step up the moments of like choreography, because I can even imagine like there wasn't too much with the choreography, a whole bunch of like, say, it's especially in this show, if Batman hits somebody, the words like bam will like
Yes.
pop up, you know. It's like
Yeah.
it was that type of feel that I can imagine while watching it's the closest thing that you're gonna get to a comic book,
Totally.
just because that's what you would see. You would see all these like kind of pop words just pop off, like, you know, just out of nowhere. So I don't know. That was just my little piece that I wanted to say about this Adam West show.
No, and it's honestly to the point you're saying is like, although it wasn't as genuine to the Batman story in terms of like what it was meant to be, like the broody, the dark, all of that,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely kept Batman alive during this era because this is
Mm-hmm.
also the time that they were thinking of even like pulling the plug on Comics and Batman just because
Mm-hmm.
it was a very tough time to kind of push these stories. So the TV show served a huge purpose. Like you said, it was like kind of like the only thing you were getting from these comic book fans, us in those days were like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we're seeing these people on the screen, all of that, right?
Right.
And so it definitely kept Batman alive and it did its purpose. Eventually, like much of the other things in this era, like it got boring for people. It was hard for people to keep up. But then we launched into this era back where we're getting things like The Killing Joke, and we're getting things like Ego, and like the year one of Batman and things like that, or like A Death in the
I'm
Family.
pulling up
And
the Ego comic. Just
yes,
yeah, it's up there.
yes. And it's really cool. And I think it's awesome because this is the era that essentially launched the films that I think for me were the first ones I actually watched, right? Like I never saw the original like TV series. I never
Mhm.
saw like one of the OG movies, but I did see, of course, like the Michael Keaton, like Batman films, the Tim
Mhm.
Burton ones, right?
Mhm.
And these are the films that essentially were birth of this era. It really set the stage because that was the goal, was to keep like the broody, keep the gloomy aspects of the films. I think this kind of lands us into like a present time, and I know we've had conversations in the past about like the Michael Keaton films. So this is a where I'd like you to take it away,
Okay. All
highlights
right.
and
So,
such.
say when it comes down to the Michael Keaton films, yes, these were the ones that obviously I was first introduced to, Batman movie wise, and just to uh, kind of go alongside with Grace, I've never seen any Batman movie before Michael Keaton. Like I've
Mhm.
only really read about it and seen like a few snippets here and there from documentaries. But these movies are, but like these two movies, Batman and Batman Returns, these were like the first movies to where I can remember like if anything, even up until this day, like pre Marvel, pre 2000, let's say 7 or 6, like Batman was kind of like the blockbuster, you know? And like when it came down to, especially with Michael Keaton, I remember having the action figures of this Batman with the Joker and everything like that. And in watching it, it was like, say with the original, the first Batman, the first Michael Keaton movie, um, I liked it specifically meant because it was more so Jack Nicholson played the hell out of the Joker. Like he's one of my favorite Jokers. Even though there's only like a handful, he's just one of my favorite Jokers here. And it showed how dark a hero can be, because even around that time we did have uh Superman, and I forgot who that actor was that uh had the horse riding accident. Hold on, it's killing me that I don't know
Oh,
that.
okay. I
Superman,
cannot help
Christopher
you.
Reed. Yes, I like because that came out initially, I guess, before these Batman movies, right? So I knew of the Superman movies and I was a fan, but like at the end of the day, those were on the brighter side. And Michael Keaton himself, it it goes into like, this is the first time you see well, for me, the first time I've seen his parents getting killed, and coincidentally it was he was they were killed by the Joker, you know. And it was just um it was dark to the point to where I love the action, but at the same time, it was gritty, you know.
Yes.
And um, this Batman in particular, or I won't even say Michael Keaton, but just like the Tim Burton's uh, Batmen in particular, they were cool. I won't even say cool. They were different from what we know today, just because I feel like these Batmen were a little bit more gadget based, you know. Like throughout the years, like Batman got a little bit more physical, a little bit more like cool. Christian Bale was more so like a ninja kind of Batman, you know. It's
Yeah.
they're different phases, you know, to where here Michael Keaton, he kind of made these gadgets uh like, well, not made the gadgets, but the gadgets made this Batman cool and made him what it is,
Yes.
you know. Like you
Like the
got the,
gadgets
yeah, like,
made Batman.
right. It was like, yeah, the cool Batmobile. He even brought out the, is it the Batwing, like the actual jet in this first movie. And like he just had an answer for the Joker, uh, really just by solving it with technology, not really by the wits, not really going too hand to hand like we've seen later on with Batman. But all in all, yes, like this Batman for me was a little bit more gadget based, and that's what kind of made it cool for me growing up.
I think part of it is kind of what the purpose was in his creation, if you will, like making a superhero that's a little bit more grounded in humanity, which I think for us is kind of exciting because it's easier for us to be put into those shoes in a way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that always like feels empowering. Like whenever I watch like any Marvel film, DC film, like afterwards, I just want to go to the gym. Like I just want to go to the gym and work out and just be like, ah, because it's
Wait,
like
so
it's
tell
it's
tell us
fun.
tell us because I'm just gonna throw it out there to the streaming world. I just saw some pictures in Grace's stories to where she's just flexing in the gym. So tell us,
Hello.
did you see like a superhero thing right before these flex pictures, or or
I no no
what?
no. Okay, so I will literally watch something like the like the Harley Quinn escape scene in Suicide Squad, like the 2021 one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll watch something like that if I'm like I don't really want to go to the gym, but I have to go. And so I'll watch like a clip that I know will get me like really excited, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, we're going. So it's not like I don't always need it, but normally like I've told you before, I've shared this before, like my workouts used to be like 5 a.m. and then get ready for work and be at work by 8. That
Mm-hmm.
was great for me. But now it's like I take clients at 6 a.m. and 7 and 8. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've had to kind of shift my schedule. And so for me, it's always been a hassle to do it later in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a mess, man. And honestly, like posting those pictures were more so to be like, I'm like trying to stay consistent and everything. But thank you. Thank you for giving my guns a shout out. I'm proud. I
Oh
feel
yeah,
good.
she was
I
flexing hard. Yep.
haven't. Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I hide my face because I'm like working very hard to show them off, but they're there. I
Definitely.
actually haven't posted any recently because, well, I shared with you, I had a hair accident. My
It
hair is
looks
thicker,
nice,
guys. This is good.
folks.
Thank you.
Okay, she says she has an accident, but I was actually picturing much worse. But it's honestly not that bad.
I there's no better way to say it than I lit my hair on fire.
Yeah, I wasn't
I am
gonna say
sure it's
that.
okay. We're here. We're here. No, that's
Hmm.
honestly why I haven't posted any recently because I'm just like I gotta find something to do with it.
Yeah,
It's fine. I've
yeah,
had
yeah.
short hair before. It just wasn't the moment I was planning to live.
I gotcha.
Revisiting back to the Tim Burton Batman films because he only directed like the first two, but what were supposed to be like that essentially like trilogy turned into quadrilogy, like
I
where
don't
it's
even know what to say
uh
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I know what you're
yeah,
trying to
it's
say. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you get it. You
Mm-hmm.
get it. And so he directed the first two, right? Batman and Batman Returns, and
Mm-hmm.
they definitely retain that grittiness, like the darker tones that I think we associate with Tim Burton and just like Batman as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like those work so well, and I love them both. In reference to just like the 1989 Batman film, um, we actually studied that in film. I studied film in college,
Mm-hmm.
and that's actually one of the films that we studied
Okay.
because of its incorporation of music and like diegetic sound. So essentially, sound that lives within the world of the film that you're watching, not just something you hear, but that the characters hear in their world. So
Mm-hmm.
examples: Gardens of the Galaxy. James Gunn, just period, uses this super well. We saw it in Gardens of the Galaxy. Suicide Squad 2, and even Peacemaker has a lot of that thrown throughout the film. So that's one of the things we actually really studied. And that film used a lot of like Prince songs, which also just kind of helped to, I think, grasp like a bigger audience and launch it to be what it is.
Oh, for
But
sure. Especially
yeah.
around that time in '89. I maybe in '89 I'm aging myself. I was 3, right? And there was a moment to where the Joker is throwing a parade, throwing out money, but they're playing Prince in the background. Me
Mhm.
being a 3 or 4 year old watching this, I'm over here dancing in my living room, just like I don't know what's going on. Joker seems like a good guy, He's throwing out money, but I was kind of jamming to the music in the background. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so it's really cool. Like it's that significant that it's part of like college curriculum when you study film. It's really dope.
Right.
And I guess moving from here, we get into Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
Wait, hold on. I do want to mention a gripe that I do have.
Oh, let's
Okay.
go. I like gripes.
Okay, because this is still with the 89 Batman, to where uh Batman and his identity is a mystery only to everyone but the Justice League. That's what we've seen, right? But when it comes down to this movie, right? First things first, he goes on a date with a reporter. Her name was Vicky Vale, and Vicky Vale gets stood up a couple times, and then from being stood up, she was able to put two and two together and just like, oh, he must be the Batman. And I was just like, no, no, no. I'm sorry. Like, this is, of course, me watching today. Like, of course, like earlier, I wasn't thinking about it. But, like, looking at it now, I was just like, she solved who Batman was. And this is something that, even in every movie that we've seen going forward, actually, post Tim Burton, because I think there were three instances. It was Batman, Batman Returns, and Batman Forever, to where the love interest knew who Bruce Wayne was, you know?
Hmm.
But after that, I don't think it was until we got the Dark Knight Rises, to where we know Catwoman, and even
Right.
the villain Ra's al Ghul's daughter
Hmm.
knew who he was. But so all in all, his secret identity was a mystery. So that was the only thing that I had with the original Batman. How this reporter just, she didn't even work at the newsstand. She was visiting. Like, she was a writer for Time magazine, and then she just kind of randomly popped up to study the bat. And then day or two of just studying, quote unquote, she's like, oh, it's Bruce. And Alfred just let her into the Batcave, you know? I'm like, come on, man. Like, first off, he's trying to figure out how to take out the Joker, because by now Joker has put a whole bunch of chemicals in the products, turning people into like some smiley face like addicts, right?
Yes.
And then out of nowhere, while he's doing his research in the Batcave, she just pops up, and Alfred's just like, Vicky Vale, sir. I'm like, no, nah, Alfred,
I,
you're done. You're
I
fired, man.
All right, I want to address that for sure because there's a lot I want to talk about there, and I totally agree. Totally agree. But before, I don't want to forget about this. So, in rewatching this Batman, because I watched it a couple weeks ago before it was taken off HBO Max, it was early in the movie because they're talking about what's her name?
Vicky Vale.
Vicky Vale. And she's showing her like Times magazine, photography cover
Right,
and everything,
right.
right? It is of Corto Maltese. It's about the revolution of Corto Maltese, which is essentially the foundation for Suicide Squad 2, like 2021 film. I thought that was so cool because
Wait,
obviously this is
wait.
something I
Do
would
say
not
that
have
again. I'm
flagged.
sorry. Say that again.
So the Times magazine that she's showing, I think one of the other news
Right,
reporters, right, as
right.
she's getting introduced to this like, you know, news place. Where do news reporters work? News station?
The let's call it, they call it like a daily something, either like the Daily
Yeah,
Bugle
there
or
we go.
Daily Planet, you know. It's always
That's yeah.
daily, you know.
No, but she's showing the magazine and it's showing, and I think the title is like Civil War of Corto Maltese, which is
Mhm.
basically the event we were falling into in Suicide Squad 2, which I thought was so cool because it's something I would not have flagged if we hadn't seen obviously Suicide Squad 2. So I thought that was
Wow.
really
Look
cool.
at you.
Yeah. I
Reading.
freaked
Like, I
out.
looked at the picture. I didn't even read like around it. Did it, like, was it like a topic that was on the picture that says?
Dude, it was like on big bold like
Yeah, I missed
font.
it. I was just looking at
Yeah.
the actual images.
This is what happens when you study film.
Gotcha.
I'm just
Gotcha.
kidding.
Gotcha.
But going back to what you mentioned, I so say what you're saying, see what you're saying because it's kind of like a golden rule, right?
Right.
Like to us, it's like yeah, like Clark, like Kent. Am I mixing it up? No, Clark Kent. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. For
Superman.
some reason, yeah, my brain's like Kent Clark.
No, Clark
Minimal sleep
Kent.
this week, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Clark Kent. I was right. It's like him with his like glasses, and then glasses are gone in Superman, and no one figures it out. Like you're
Right.
not supposed to figure these dots out that are actually pretty plain. Like it's a rule. Like leave it be, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I so get that. And on top of I didn't even notice that like the whole Alfred thing is like Alfred wouldn't do that. Like he's
Right.
usually the most discreet of them all. Like he's the one preventing Bruce from doing stupid crap, you know?
Right. Like let's we're kind of well I'm going to fast forward. Like say we even if it goes to Batman Begins, like the love interest didn't know who he was until like he quoted her and then she was like, "Oh wait, I said that's Bruce." Oh, that's Bruce Wayne, you know? So, at the end of the day,
That makes
his
sense.
like
Yeah.
his identity has always kind of been a mystery and then like within a few days Vicky Vale just like pulled up to
Yes, she's
Wayne
cute,
Manor and was
but
like, "Hey, Alfred, I know." And Alfred could have played it cool, like on some, "I don't know what you're talking about, Miss Vale. Get out of here. Beat
yeah,
it. Scram." But,
his job,
but
his
he really just
job.
like invited her into the Batcave, and then you can see the surprise in Michael Keaton's face. He's like, it's like, what are you doing here? But yeah, that was pretty much my only gripe that I had with the original Keaton movie.
I stand by that 100%,
Mm-hmm.
100%. So I think for me, we go into Batman
Okay.
Forever and Batman and Robin. So
Mm-hmm.
these two films are not directed by Tim Burton.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was set to direct Batman Forever before it was called Batman Forever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he was not in line with the vision I think the studio wanted to lean on, which was more of a cartoony, campy, colorful
And that's where
feel.
it went. Like you saying that, like these two movies, especially in the four, these two were totally different from the feel of Batman and Batman Returns. You know, more like you
100%.
said, like more color and all that. But I feel like if anything, that wasn't really needed if we want to continue with the Batman story.
Yeah, it kind of revisited the 1966 TV show run in terms of what they were doing, but it's like the purpose of that was because they were restricted based, because of like the like comic book authority or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of set Batman back a little bit, I think, and it just kind of got worse with
Definitely.
Batman and Robin. And yeah, so I forget the director that ended up directing Batman Forever and then Batman Returns, or Batman and Robin. But I know that he is a fan of the comics, of Batman comics specifically. And originally, he did want to do something that resembled Batman Year One. And Batman Year One is definitely in like the 70s and like 80s era where there was a lot more of the gloom and broody and almost like the psychology behind Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
But the studio was like very much like, we're not having none of that. And so he kind of yielded to their vision of this very like clowny type feel into these films, you know? So the reason I wanted to make sure, I mean, I think this is, I kind of want to draw the tie already. Um, the Batman, which is coming out like in a week, it's it has a lot of influences from Ego, right? The comic Ego, and what is it called? The Long Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
but it's essentially based in year two of Batman, and it's meant to be everything that I think. Let me actually pull up his name because I know I have it written down, and I want to make sure I got it. Give me 1 second. Oh, Joel Schumacher.
Oh,
Do you know how to
Joel.
say his last name?
Joel
Joel
for one, and last maker. The last name is Schumacher.
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 Thank you.
Yeah.
Schumacher.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, you didn't even get the first name right, Grace. Let me fix you there.
You
But
saying it
anyways,
just
like,
reminded me because he was actually he was huge in the 90s. So like outside of
yeah,
Batman, like me hearing like I on in every commercial is like directed by Joel Schumacher. Like it was just like something that you would hear a lot in the
It
90s.
was
So
big,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah.
it would make sense when like Tim Burton didn't want to take on this project anymore that they turned to him, who he was really big during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of it's kind of nice drawing those ties where it's like his original vision that was then I guess corrupted by like the vision of the studio is kind of what we're going to be getting with this new Batman, and I think that's awesome because it just feels like every single time you go back to the dark and the broody and the gloomy and like the psychology behind Batman,
Mm-hmm.
it just is better. It historically looking on everything we've just talked about so far, it is better. And whenever you regress it back to like too much of that clowny and campy vibe, it just doesn't stand like the test of time,
Well, like let's talk specifically about Batman Forever, just in general, because if you look at this poster, okay, minus uh, Chris O'Donnell, like you have Val Kilmer, who at the time was huge in the 90s. You
Mm,
had Jim Carrey, who's still huge to this day. You have Tommy Lee Jones, who's still huge to the day, as well as Nicole Kidman. So it's like you have all of these actors who I feel like have the quote unquote caliber to make, let's say, a continuation of the Michael Keaton Batman, but the if it was just more so the notion of the studio wanting to go brighter, then I can say I would blame that 100% on the studio because I can't say the actors were it. Like yes, uh, Jim Carrey was a quote unquote clown, let's say, but just from what we've seen, especially up until now, we know that Jim Carrey can go dark,
mhm,
and uh, Tommy Lee, Tommy Lee Jones playing Two Face. Two Face, me, I was super heavy into Batman, the animated series, and Two Face, I feel, was one of my favorite villains in there. Right? It was the whole flip of the coin thing, and even from how his face looked. Right? But here, it was almost like they had Tommy Lee Jones trying to match Jim Carrey's energy, which was just on some just silliness. It wasn't ever really super serious because Two Face has never really been a serious. I mean, a silly person. He was
absolutely.
Harvey Dent. He was the assistant district attorney or the district attorney. He was all about business, but it's like from here, Batman Forever, and then continuing to Batman and Robin. This is where, like, yes, the actors were there. It was just the direction was not, and like you said, that type of situation could hurt the franchise. And from there, I think there was a huge gap from Batman and Robin to uh uh was it Batman Begins. Like the studio had to figure out
The formula.
yeah, how to go forward with the Batman because, like I said, Batman, if anybody, when it comes to superheroes, he was that person before Marvel was a thing, and Warner Brothers could have made it as if it were just like the MCU, just a continuation with Batman, and different stories or whatnot. But it was these two movies that I feel kind of hurt the franchise to where it's just like, yeah, it was cool in the moment, and the little kids like me loved it. But like looking back and watching it again, it's like it's almost like I cringe when watching it, especially with uh, Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Mr.
Oh
Freeze.
my God. Yes. It's fun to watch these because they're nostalgic. I think it's fun to watch them. But I mean, all of that is so, so true. Like if you talk to Kilmer, I think there's like an interview where he was like, yes, I played a very clowny, like over dramatized, like version of this very huge character, right?
Right.
Batman. but it led me to get kind of any role I wanted there forward, you know? So for him, it
Mm-hmm.
opened even bigger doors, which is freaking awesome. But even he acknowledges kind of like the campiness that was a little overdone in Batman Forever. And then with Batman and Robin, I think it was like George Clooney himself, I think was like giving money or giving refunds to anyone who went to go see the film.
Oh
Because
shit.
he was like, I think he even stated like I killed, or not him single-handedly, but like this film killed the franchise, and it did, because we didn't really get another film until Batman Begins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years and years later.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to revisit something that you said, and I think you said it so well, in regards to Batman Forever and your comparison of the Riddler and Two Face.
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to this interview, and I forgot who was talking. I don't know if it was a writer, creator, or what of like Batman, but he's definitely someone who's intimately involved with Batman in his comics and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he was dissecting essentially the Joker, who, I mean, you think Batman, you think Joker, and vice versa, right?
Right.
In the first issue of Batman, like we were introduced to the Joker, like they go hand in hand from the origin story, right?
Right.
And they dissect the Joker essentially, like if you were to pull him apart into like the psychopathic killer and the flamboyant comedian, you have Two-Face and you have the Riddler.
Mm.
So that being said, that they're, and you said that so well, like they're very contrasted villains, right?
Right.
And so for them to have tried to make Two-Face, who is like almost by definition kind of like as far away from the Riddler as you can get, and you know, for a villain, it doesn't, the chemistry isn't there, like the balance isn't there.
Right.
And we've seen cases where there's still, because obviously I think Batman has one of like the most amazing line of villains. Like they're the widely recognizable,
Mm-hmm.
they're fun, a lot of them are colorful, but there's a balance where you still have like the genuine components of the villains, because the villains are very strong, like many characters, like most of them have run like their own like solo magazines or
Mm-hmm.
solo comic book series, right?
Right.
You can still retain that but maintain the gloom of like Batman, which almost kind of like contrast the two in a really good way, where you maintain the gloomy elements of like Batman and what his stories are all about, but still keeping like the trueness of the characters. And I think honestly, like The Dark Knight does that so well. Like I think the Joker, Heath Ledger's like adaptation of the Joker, like he's playful, but he's a freaking killer. Like he has
Right.
all the dimensions, but it still doesn't compromise like the gloominess of the overall theme and like cinematic feel of the films or like the franchise itself, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a balance that can be had, you know, it's not one or the other. And I definitely feel like, you know, these two films, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, like are kind of, you know, like they missed the mark. Like at
Yeah.
this point, they're fun films to look back at, but definitely not like what I think us as fans like crave when we think Batman, you know?
Right. Okay.
Oh, oh okay. Moving on.
All right. So,
Okay.
where do you want to go from here?
Let me just double check, make sure there's nothing I missed here. But I think here this is where we segue into the Christian Bale Batman films.
Okay.
And on these are the ones that I truly, truly like grew up on, because it's like these are the ones that I first watched like in theater as they came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, like when I think Batman, and in terms of like what I love, like these are my favorite films. Like my favorite film for a long time was The Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Like I loved it so much, and I think it's because it's just like it's so dark, but it's fun. You still get the gadgets, but you have that like addition of just like the choreographed. How did you word it? You kind of mentioned
I
it. I
said it
think
was he's
like
like a ninja,
he's like
basically.
a
Yeah.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
he's like a ninja, but in a way that I think blends well for um for Bruce Wayne. You know, it's you get fantastic, but it doesn't cross a line where it becomes too unrealistic for the scope of the film. Like I'm kind of thinking of in I think it is the Dark Knight, where Bruce or Batman is trying to take one of like that one rich guy who was working with like the mafia, but he went back to like I don't know if it was Japan, where they
The
don't
Asian
like
guy.
extradite. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
they don't like extradite people, so he's like, Batman's above the law, so he pretty much takes them and throws them to like Gotham PD, right?
Right.
And I mean, this scene is basically what Fast and Furious, the most recent one, was trying, I think, to do, but flopped. Right? Because it's like you have this airplane scene where he's like diving in. And you know what I'm talking about? Like he's diving in, he takes out all of these people and
Are you
like,
asking me about Fast and the Furious, this last one?
oh no, no, I'm saying like I feel like
Oh,
this
because
scene
I
that
was
I'm
about to say
referring to
there's
when
nothing
he
memorable in the Fast and Furious, the
no,
last one, Fast Nine.
just that it
Let's
was
not
so
talk about
horrible.
it. Yeah,
Totally
yeah,
agree. No, totally agree. And I'm just using it to like contrast how great like I think the action was done in say like The Dark Knight, where it's like you have like these fantastic action sequences, but they live within this reality where it's just you're just hyped and you were loving it. It doesn't jump the shark. You know what I mean?
we'll
The way
say
other things have.
the I loved each one of Christopher Nolan's version Batman movies, right? And uh just to kind of go back onto Batman Begins, I feel like he set it up well to where um it it made sense from him doing all of these trainings, because initially you think before Batman Begins came out, you never really think how Batman became who he is, as far as his abilities. Of course you think, oh, Bruce Wayne, he's rich and he can buy the gadgets, but the gadgets don't make, well, they made Batman before, but they don't really make who he is from what we've seen in comics, animated series, and all that. So and Batman Begins brought that factor to where it's just like, okay, so aside from, because he even admitted at the beginning of the movie to Ra's al Ghul that he has some type of martial arts training, right?
Mhm.
But even in doing that, and going through the training with Ra's al Ghul, is like, okay, this is how he can just disappear out of nowhere, and that's always kind of been a thing with Batman, to where even with, I don't even know if it was, well, I think it was in it's starting with Michael Keaton. You just see him one moment, and then the
Yep.
person turns and then turns back and he's gone, and you
It's
never
become a
really,
joke now.
right,
Yeah.
right, and you never really
In a
know
good way.
why, right, a joke in a good way. But now it's like, okay, Christopher Nolan set it up like, okay, so now I'm actually going to show you that he did train to hide in the dark and do all these things that you would think a ninja would do. So moving into the Dark Knight, or even the Dark Knight Rises, the choreography and the physical aspects, yes, we did have the cool gadgets, and even uh kind of going off of what you said, the idea of taking somebody out of a building in Asia just by airplane or whatnot. That's a cool. That's like a testament to who Bruce Wayne is. But we did get more so a feel of the physical aspects of Batman. It was more so believable. You can see him taking on all of these people. I'm like, okay, it wasn't too outlandish. It was him brawling. And
Mhm.
um, this made Batman a little bit more believable, if that makes sense. Even though it's fictional, a little bit more realistic. It wasn't too over the top.
It's grounded. And I think like what I'm thinking of is it gives them the credibility to be like so like have these amazing choreographed, not just like fight sequences, but also just these action shots,
Mm-hmm.
in like, films after Batman Begins, because you see kind of the grit he got through to be the skilled, vigilante that he is,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I love how you as you were talking about Batman Begins, you talked a little bit about that in between, right? Because it's honestly this is how it happens in the comics. Like every time it repeats, like the comics pretty much just repeat themselves, right? They kind of just like get deeper and grasp
Mm-hmm.
different elements of the stories, but
Mm-hmm.
it's always like Batman goes through this tragedy, and now like or Bruce Wayne, and then he becomes this vigilante, right? Like
Right.
his parents were killed due to violence. He wants to like stop the violence here in Gotham, right? But we don't
Wait,
see
before you
all
go
like that in
further,
the middle.
I do want to kind of say, like, Though I love all the Batman stories and as far as how they begin, can we move forward along from his mom's pearls? Because no matter what, as far as like them talking about how his parents went out, I'm seeing pearls fly, like just fly everywhere, you know. So I don't know if that is pretty much what was shown in the comics, but I get it. You know, they were rich, they were wealthy, you know, but we can move forward, and I feel like if anything, if we can show just uh if it's like them going, wait, did they even show the pearls in the movie The Joker? Cuz I feel like honestly it was just somebody just gunned them down, you know? Gunned the Waynes down in The Joker.
Um, I don't even know. I can't remember. I was too like focused on the fires and the other stuff that was going on in that scene.
Right,
I,
right.
I honestly, like, I'm thinking back, I kind of want to say yes,
Mhm.
but I don't know. Like, I truly don't remember. We're gonna have to look that up before we do like our full actual like the Batman breakdown. Like, we're definitely gonna do that. Um, I totally get it. And now I'm like thinking, wouldn't it be so funny? The first scene we get in the Batman is just pearls dropping onto the concrete. Chill
It's
walks
gonna
out.
happen. No,
Chill
I'm
just
not. I'm
walks
I'm really
out.
not, because say at the end of the day, I want to see this Batman coming out just from the commercials, and like I said, Robert Pattinson, he has stepped it up in his last few movies to the point to where I'm not even thinking about Twilight. The only person stuck in Twilight to me is Kristen Stewart, but aside from that, Robert Pattinson, I'm actually excited to see. And once I like heard that he was becoming Batman initially, I was like, I don't know. But it was once I got that news, that's when I saw his latest movies, and I was like, okay, I see how he can play a serious role. Batman is a serious character. I'm in. You know.
And you know something, I think it's so easy to overshadow his potential for this character because of films like Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look, even just not just, immediately recently, but he's done a lot of pretty good work post Twilight,
Yeah.
a lot of more like indie type things, a lot more like smaller budget, but very creative and well produced films and projects. And honestly, the same goes for Kristen Stewart. It's just I think they don't become as mainstream, obviously, as like Twilight. So it's like Twilight still screams louder than all the other work. But he's done a lot of great things, and so I'm excited to see the film this film coming out. And I love kind of having talked about some of the history in terms of the ups and downs of the way that Batman has been kind of like been seen right in these years. And obviously we still have to talk about Ben Affleck. We
Oh,
can't
sure. We're
forget
not
about
we're not
him.
there yet. But let
Yeah,
me ask
but
you a random question. This is totally off topic. As far as the internet is concerned, are you familiar with the tier system, like starting from S all the way to D? Do you know what that is? Have you ever heard of that? Okay,
no,
so there is a
no.
rating scale, and it's basically on some rating anything. And S is top tier, and then it goes A, B, C, D, just like how grades were, right? So I want to shout out to Jesse Pinkman. He's back, and he said that for him, Robert Pattinson is a quote unquote S tier actor, based off of what he saw in Tenet, and Tenet was one of those movies to where at the very end, I was like, no. Like I actually wanted Pattinson to survive, you know, but like it was his acting along with the story that made him more lovable. And I think I hate to bring up Robert Downey Jr. again, but just kind of thinking about what we talked about last week with him versus whoever is going to be the new Tony Stark in this Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Like Robert Downey Jr. He had that charisma. He had that lovable type of like vibe to where it's like you don't want this person to go bad. Where I feel as if I've heard that the same with, I'm drawing a blank.
Rob
What's
Pattinson.
no. Who's the Amazing Spider-Man?
The Amazing Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield. I've heard the same thing about it, and I agree. And I feel like that's the same with Robert Pattinson. He has grown to be almost like a lovable actor. He may play a bad person, he may play a good person, but at the end of the day, he has that type of charisma to where I feel like this is what's needed for Batman. Like I don't really see anybody else playing Batman right now. Like Ben Affleck, he was cool, but Ben Affleck was cool to the point to where it wasn't really the gadgets. It was more so he got for me it was more so he got super jacked and he filled out the bat suit and his body type was similar to what we got in the comic book and the animated series because beforehand we didn't really get uh, a big Batman. We kind of got leaner Batman. I would say Michael Keaton, looking back to me, Michael Keaton was more so a skinny Batman, you know? And we didn't really get the look of Val Kilmer or who was after Val? George
George
Clooney.
Clooney.
We didn't really think of them more so as far as body type, but then move forward into Christian Bale, especially when it comes to Batman Begins. He just came off of I think it's called The Machinist or something like that, to where he
Oh
was
yeah. Yes.
maybe he looked maybe 70, 80 pounds, you know. But when it comes down
If.
to Batman Begins, he put on that weight to where he filled out and became a little bit more having that athletic look, you know. And I'm
Yeah.
curious just to see where Robert Pattinson goes as far as his physical look, because all I can really see right now is him in Twilight. They showed him and he looked kind of like skinny, so I'm hoping they kind of buffed him up a little bit for this role, you know, because just from what we've seen in the commercials of him beating up these people and taking all these bullet shots like it's nothing, I'm really hoping that he kind of fills out in this role.
You know something? I love that you bring that up. There's actually, and I gotta find it. I'll remember it, and I'll look for it, and then I kind of give up. I'm like, I'll try later, but then I never do. There's actually like a comic series where Batman is like an Olympic lifter or like a power lifter.
Okay.
It is so cool. Like these panels of him just like it's just freaking insane. Like seeing him deadlift this massive weight with like thick calves and thick thighs. If you see my boyfriend, you
Right.
know that's what I like.
Oh
And
shit, she
so
likes
it's
him
like,
thick.
it's and it is just so cool. Like I totally understand. Like I think and this is something we look at for all superheroes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it's just the athleticism is something you admire severely, and it's along with just like what the actors have to do to get to that point is freaking insane. And I think you and I being in the profession, we have a really great appreciation for just the levels that these actors have to push themselves through to play these roles. And I mean, I guess we'll see in terms of like the physicality that we'll have this new Batman taking.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, Rob Pattinson does have much more of a leaner
Mhm.
like look to him.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I wonder like where that's gonna look. I'm excited just to see his abilities as an actor. I think he's gonna do amazing. But I will definitely look for that. Like how what's the girth of your biceps?
Right,
What's
right.
the
I just want to do a couple quick shout outs because we got someone new, Gavin. What up? What's up, Gavin, in the chat? And Jesse said he that Robert may be in the same tier as Christian Bale, and it'll be a fight for who's a better Batman. And I don't wanna compare him to Christian just because these are these are all different Batman, just like there were different Jokers, you know? Like, I can't compare Jack Nicholson to Heath Ledger. They were both good. They just, say, Jack Nicholson was a little bit more so, like you mentioned, on the quote unquote campy side, but he was still serious to where uh, Heath Ledger, he went super dark, which was more so it was in a good way, you know.
yes.
I wasn't saying I can't really compare the two. The only person that I wish I could have seen more of was who was in Suicide Squad again? Jared Leto.
Jared Leto.
Right. And Jared Leto to me, he didn't represent the Joker as well as the other two, but I got a better feel for this Joker in the Snyder cut to where I was like, okay,
Yes.
if only we got this Joker in Suicide Squad, and if they decided to continue with this Snyder cut, I would like to see what this Joker with the long hair uh comes out to be, and how he, cuz it looks like they've all teamed up to quote unquote take on the Superman, because that's what that storyline's about. It's about Superman going dark and everybody's kind of teaming up to take down Superman. But as far as the Jokers and the Batman are concerned, I don't really want to compare, just because they're all different. Everybody's going to translate and make their own version of these characters. So I'm all for just seeing what Pattinson does, just because this is going to be his take on the Batman. So we'll just see where it goes from there.
I will say though that I think if we were going to kind of compare a Batman, I think based on what we're just seeing in the trailer, I think the Christian Bale one would be like a pretty decent place to kind of do some comparisons on, just because I think the films are very similar in aesthetic in terms, just based on
Right,
what we're seeing with the trailer.
right.
But I totally hear what you're saying. It's like the adaptations are so different. It's like, and they match obviously the theme of what that story is trying to really harness. So obviously the characters are going to adapt to what that role
Well,
is
I
or what
feel
that movie is. So
I feel I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I feel like Warner Brothers, they found their formula, which is if it's Batman, then it's dark,
yes,
and we already attempted to go on the lighter side with Batman Forever, and I forgot the other one. It doesn't even matter. But when it comes down to it, they tried that and it failed, and they even tried it again in the original cut of the Justice League, and that
that's
and that failed as well. So if we're gonna talk Batman just in general, then all in all, it's going to have to be gritty. It's gonna have to be dark. It doesn't have to be. I want to kind of go back to what Jesse said to me a few months back, saying that he found out that this movie was PG-13. It doesn't have to go dark to the point to where it's rated R, just because, again, Batman is not a killer. Batman is not somebody who's out here doing the things that Wolverine and Deadpool are doing to where they deserve those R's. But Batman could beat up some thugs and still kind of keep it family friendly, to the point to where it's dark enough for adults to enjoy as well as the little kids.
yes. And I feel like I'm so happy we were able to kind of look back at the history of Batman cinematically, because time and time again proves that that is the formula that works, that sticks, and this is the Batman we want. This is what we crave. And yes, I think like a PG-13 Batman can still get that job done. In terms of Batman himself, I mean, there are storylines that he just goes. I think especially the after the death of is it Jason Todd? What is it, Jason Todd? Yes, death of a family.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
on lack of sleep, so I just needed the confirmation. Yep.
right.
Especially after that, like there's like it goes to an extreme, and I feel like if say that was something that they wanted to capture cinematically, I would love to see an R rating on that.
But
That would
see,
be really
but
good.
see,
But
that's
it's not needed, and I agree with
no,
that.
it's not needed. But like, say they went with that story to where um the story of Jason Todd, I believe that's the story of Joker kills him, like, quote unquote, but he doesn't really kill him. He corrupts him, and he eventually becomes the Red Hood. So
Hmm.
it was never really like a quote unquote death in the family. He doesn't die. He comes back maybe years down the road, but when it comes down to movies going R, and the idea of Batman going R, it for me would have to be on some Joker level, like the recent Joker movie that just came out type of level. But I don't see that happening if the Joker, especially this Joker, is not in the movie.
And I see what you're saying, and like I said, I totally agree. Like, I don't think this movie is going to be bad because it's PG-13. I think it's going to master it completely. Just to kind of clarify, and more so the comics or storylines after the events of like Jason Todd's like supposed death, like Bruce's whole mannerism and ideology just get very warped because it's traumatic, right? To lose, you know, a
Right,
son figure,
right.
right? And I feel like that's something that would be so amazing to explore in, sure, like a context of like the Joker, but also something like Logan. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Where we get this just severely gritty and severely not dramatized. I don't want to use that word, but it's like really enveloping in the deepness of like Gotham and that kind of aspect. I feel like that would just be really cool to explore, not just from like a violent action
Mm-hmm.
type of mannerism, because yeah, like Bruce doesn't kill like
Right.
anybody, but more so just like, especially because we're talking Batman, like the psychology of it, like the like inner demons aspect of it. I feel like that would be so cool. But kind of getting back to this film, I want to. I think I had a couple more notes I wanted to talk
Okay.
about. Oh, actually, yes, yeah, yeah. Before we get into kind of more theorizing of like the new film coming up, I wanted to kind of take it back with like the Ben Affleck's version, because we went over it super briefly. Honestly, we don't have to go further than just briefly because I don't think he weaves too much of a presence because he's just kind of plugged in, right? Um, I do agree with the presence he gives in terms of the physicality of Batman, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why it works in the way that they've used him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't have like, obviously it's like we have like Batman versus like Superman, and we have like the Justice League and all of these, but it's not like he has a huge influential like component to the films the way that the Christian Bale have, or even like the Michael Keaton, et cetera, right? He kind of just fills the gap, you know what I mean? The placeholder in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But the Snyder cut, I think honestly, I think the Snyder cut just did so much for all of it. Like it made me want obviously more Joker, like a Jared Leto Joker,
Mm-hmm.
but even more of this kind of Batman. Like I'm envisioning kind of like that almost like post-apocalyptic theme, which is actually like the background for a lot of different stories in the comics. And I'm envisioning him in like the cowl, but then he has like this, what was it, like an overcoat on top,
Right,
and like it's just
right.
everyone looks so great. Like I hope we get to explore that. Obviously, it would be independent of this new film that's coming out, the Batman, but I feel like that would just be so cool to see
According to
because
Ben,
I feel
that
like that
that
left
idea's
us.
over. Ben
I
Affleck, he's
know,
like, yeah, no,
I
I'm cool.
know.
This what you're getting in the Flash is the I'm done. I'm done. That's what he's
But where have we seen this
right,
before? Like
right.
I so get that, and I totally understand it. And you know something, like this film originally was supposed to be something connected to the greater DCEU, and it was completely scrapped and created into just a completely different branch,
Right.
right? That has nothing to do with the DCEU. So, I mean, I don't know. I hope the momentum of the Zack Snyder cut gives us more of this gritty, but I'm happy we're getting this. Happy we're getting this. So as we're diving into, actually, before we dive into like more predictions and theories and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything you really wanted to kind of mention of some of the other things you mentioned in terms of like the films, the TV shows, anything like that?
Mm, I would just say just when it comes down to the movies, and I'm not gonna say films. I'm not gonna talk about like the cinematics. I feel like Warner Brothers, I've said it in the past, has done a great job as far as the animated movies that they've come out with, and they and that they continue to come out with. You know, yes, they may be animated, but I still enjoy them just because they keep the stories dark. They even keep the stories adult. You know, there are
Oh
moments to
yeah.
where um, Batman hooks up with Catwoman. We don't see it, of course, but this is something that initially, when I was watching the animated series on Cartoon Network, you would never see that on that channel. But when it comes down to these movies that they come out with, I really do enjoy it. Like in one comic that I'm gonna bring up onto the screen that you sent to me is the Long Halloween, and I can say
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to the animated film that came out recently. I think it came out
Mhm.
either late last year or early this year. I've
Yep.
watched part one on HBO Max, and it's really good. But it's good to the point to where this again is coming back to Batman playing detective, and the whole story is about who is doing all these killings. It's not the normal villains. It's not the Joker. It's not anybody that we know of. It's just somebody who's killing people on certain holidays or whatnot. I'm halfway through the second one, so I don't know who it actually is, but I'll finish it. But the animated series I'm not mad at, and not the series but the movies, and that's something that I do, if anything, hope that they do continue, because I know, of course, when it comes down to just the cinematics and live action, of course, actors, they get older over time and they can't physically keep up the look, and they sign up for a certain deal. But these movies, these animated movies, they can come out no matter what, and they can just continue to come out with these voice actors kind of voicing it in. And as long as they keep the stories good, then I'm still all in for these movies. So yeah, I think that's all I got.
No, yes. Honestly, I'm happy you did, because we didn't really talk too much about the animation and like Batman in the animated series. There were several different ones, and on top of that, the movies.
Hmm.
I mean, it's like it's monumental. Like we still in this house, we watch the animated series like as we're prepping dinner. One of
Right.
us puts in like our thing. It's still, and the cool thing is we have HBO Max, which
Hmm.
has like all of this stuff, guys.
Yeah.
Like all of it. HBO Max sponsor.
Oh
We're
yeah,
looking
yeah. Holler
DM.
at us.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, like say like with you saying that, like I remember when I was super young. I went to the theater because they actually showed the movie Batman and the Mask of the Phantasm, and that movie I feel
Yes.
like it kind of it almost veered off from the series, because I think there were a few curse words in there too, and
Hmm.
this is where they start to go a little dark in their movies, and I think they kind of follow that formula going forward, so that's what kind of made it good. It wasn't necessarily specifically for the kids, but they made it just so the adults could enjoy them as well.
And I mean, I feel like it so follows like the trend of the comics, because I mean, evidently these shows, this character was created for kids, but as that audience that grew up with this character, they still want to see more of these stories. So the stories have to mature, right? Like comic books aren't just for kids anymore. Like that's long gone, right? In the 80s, I feel like that really shifted it all. And I feel like I mean these the animated like shows and movies are definitely mimicking that, so it's and we have a diversity of it. You have the content that's definitely geared for more of like the kids, like my
Mm-hmm.
daughter watches what is it called, Supergirl like High or something like that.
Right.
It has like literally all of the like female heroes, villains, and like it's so cool.
Right.
Like she knows who Amanda Waller is. Like we're basically indoctrinizing the kids to be the nerds, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then we have things like the Harley Quinn animated series, which we're still waiting on season 3 for, which is like very much adulty,
Right.
And I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome,
We
and I think
I'm sorry, we got a question in the chat saying, Chill and Grace, when are you planning on watching the Batman, on premiere or later? And my answer to that is, unfortunately for me, it's going to be later, just because I will be on a road trip the day it comes out. I'm driving to Oregon, so I will be gone that weekend. So I'm gonna try to see it first thing when I come back to LA. So what about you,
you
Grace?
literally plan your trips on the premieres of
I
everything.
know, and like initially, you and I we had a conversation in one of our meetings, and we were talking about just kind of planning the month of March out, and then like my girl, she overheard me talking to you, and she texted me. She's like, "Remember, we're leaving on this day." I was like, "Oh snap, my bad." Yeah, no, I won't be seeing it on that day.
So I live with the biggest Batman fan known to this planet.
Okay.
I'm a huge nerd. He trumps me in everything. Like, I'll be talking to him, and sometimes it feels like I can't hold the conversation because I just want to listen to him
Right.
because he's like he knows so much more than me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just awesome. So we are definitely watching it on the premiere. Like he actually asked me one day, he was like, "Hey, are we watch?" I thought he was asking like, "Oh, are we watching the movie like on premiere so that we can talk and discuss it in time for like the show or something?" I'm like, "You know what? I'm not sure. I don't think we talked about when we're doing this." He's like, "No, no, no. I am telling you, we are watching Batman when it premieres. This is not a question."
Gotcha.
So yes, that is when I will be watching it. It
Okay.
will be awesome. It'll be fun. We will be dressed up. I will. Hopefully, we'll see what happens with him, but it'll be great. It'll be
All
great.
right. So, moving forward, because we just kind of talked about all the movies up until the most recent. So, where do you want to kind of go from there?
Well, something I think where I wanted to segue into, and more so because I want to show you guys something fun, is I want us to talk a little bit about Catwoman
All
because one of
right.
the trailers I think is called The Bat and the Cat, and I think that is so fitting.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wanted, it's very similar to what we did with Batman. I kind of wanted to take a little look at all of the women who have portrayed Catwoman in the past. So, I sent you one which kind of shows like the three originals, if you
The
will, like the
OGs.
earlier, the OGs, and then it kind of divided it from like Michelle Pfeiffer and forward. But,
Mm-hmm.
so just to kind of name these lovely and amazing historic women, we have Julie Newmar, who was the first to ever portray Catwoman in
Mm-hmm.
film. And she was in the 1966 TV series, so season one and season two.
Mm-hmm.
She was not able to do the movie that came out in 1966 because she had prior commitments. And so it was Lee Merriweather that stepped in and took the role. And before I get into Eartha Kitt, I wanted to mention so Julie Newmar, I was looking up pictures, and her cowl, she doesn't have one. I don't think she has one. But what the cool thing is she has her eyebrows flicked up
Mm-hmm.
to kind of give that feel that I think the cowl and the mask gives to the Catwoman like aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can think of was like, this is the woman who originated the fluffy brow. This is the
Okay.
one. This
Okay.
is the look. I thought it was so cool. And I think the one I sent kind of shows it a little bit, but it's kind of hard to tell because I think it's in black and white. But
No. No, it's not in
oh,
black
wait,
and
I did
white.
I send you the
Yeah,
color?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's in color.
Then I
We're
did
good.
my job.
Yep. Good
I
job.
did my job.
Good job.
So I thought that was really cool. And then of course we had Eartha Kitt who took the role in 19, I think like 67, 68. She basically took the role, not I don't want to say from Julie Newmar, but she essentially like took on the role after season two. So she was Catwoman for season three, which was the final season of that show. And although, like, I mean, I feel like there's certain characteristics that we think of when we think of Catwoman. Like, she has a certain like charisma and like confidence to the
Mm-hmm.
character. And what I love that Eartha Kitt did, and I think you can just tell from the picture, is she kind of gives the character like a boldness that wasn't exactly fully there prior. Because I think when you look at female heroes like and villains is that even then they're like lesser than or they're softer or more to be like Wonder Woman when she was created was like the secretary of the Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they're always kind of were put in like second tier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's so nice, especially so early in the years of like comics or just superheroes to have like these characters and these female like roles be filled with people who are not
Right.
submissive and not what I mean, like showing the full dimension of like women, their potential, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
hold on, someone messaged me like, oh, and also the what's her name, Bertha Kitt is the voice of Yzma in the Emperor's New Groove. Fun fact.
Okay.
There you go. That was not part of my spiel, but I got distracted by like a message from a subscriber.
Awesome.
But she added like a aspect of like rebellious and like drama to it that I think has kind of stayed like the test of time. I feel like we really see that in the Michelle Pfeiffer rendition, even like
Mm-hmm.
the Anne Hathaway, and definitely like the Halle Berry. So I feel like that adaptation shifted the character, and I think we see that even like in the
Oh,
trailer for
definitely.
this film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And who was the third in this image?
that's Eartha Kitt.
No, no, no. There's the first one without the cow, then Eartha, and then there's a
Oh,
third.
okay. Okay, so without the cowl is Julie Newmar,
Mm-hmm.
and then I put Eartha Kitt because my head mixed it up in I wrote it down differently.
Okay.
And then we have Lee Merriweather. So she's the one who portrayed Catwoman in the movie, the 1966 movie.
Gotcha.
Since Julie Newman had like prior, roles
Mm-hmm.
or like contracts that she couldn't break. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna bring.
Hollywood is Hollywood. That stays the same.
I'm gonna bring the next three ladies up. We
Let's
got
do it.
Michelle, we got Halle, and we got Anne Hathaway. Now, these are the ladies that I was familiar with. Like, say initially in Batman Returns, we get Michelle Pfeiffer, and Michelle Pfeiffer, badass. She gets pushed out of a window, survives, and becomes Catwoman, and then like gets her vengeance on the person who attempted to murder her. And just
There's a bitterness to the character.
right.
Like it's just I like it.
And
Yeah.
like her relationship with Bruce Wayne, it was just like that one was just to kind of go back to what we were talked about in the from the original '89 Batman. This is to where he didn't get a feel, or she didn't know he was Bruce until he revealed it towards the end. He took his cowl
Hmm.
off, kind of ripped it off. And that was where, if anything, that was a love interest to where if I would have loved to see it continue. And of course, this is a story that goes beyond the agents. Batman and Catwoman have always been like a thing. We may not have gotten that at all in the Holly Berry version of Catwoman, which I never watched it.
I never saw it.
Like I was told about it, and I was like,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
I'm cool. I love Holly. Holly, like, random story. Okay, I was with my dad and my brother. We were in Washington D.C. randomly, and he had to go randomly meet somebody at a hotel, right? And it was me, my brother, and my cousin, and he left all three of us in the car while he had to go drop something off. The limo pulls up right next to me, and I see this guy come out with dreadlocks, and I recognize him. And initially I didn't know his name, but it was Eric Benet, and he was dating Holly Berry, but I didn't see her because of the angle that I was
Hmm.
sitting at. And then randomly the limo driver pulls, like, he rolls down the window and was just like, Holly Berry. And then I was like, cuz, watch my bro, I'll be right back. I go to the lobby of the hotel. My dad sees me. He's like, what are you doing? I was like,
I love it.
yeah.
I love. Yeah, I've never seen it. It's like I'll be like flipping through the channels back when we just didn't stream everything,
Right.
and I feel like I would just ponder upon the film and maybe see pieces of it, but I've never seen it in its entirety.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we have like Anne Hathaway, and Anne Hathaway, I love her.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because I grew up watching her in like Princess Diaries, that I feel like when I think Catwoman, her persona doesn't match perfectly. I think she did great in the Dark Knight Rises, but for me, it's like a mismatch a little bit, a little bit. I don't know if it's like for me. I think she's just so
Well,
like
I think that's
she's
because
so
I didn't
sweet
watch
and she's
that.
so.
Like, I didn't watch the Princess
Oh, okay,
Diaries, so this was more so I've seen her, like, I've known of her, but I've never really watched her up
okay.
until this point, and she, for me, did a great job. And I think, if anything, this was, I think, the first version of Catwoman. I think we got to see the cat burglar,
Oh
of
yeah,
Catwoman.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think she did a great job playing Catwoman there.
I think she did awesome. For me in my head, it like feels like a mismatch, but I think it's because of that because I've seen her in so many other things, and for me, it's like it doesn't link up in my head. But she did great. It's a personal problem. It's a
Okay.
personal problem. It is what it is. And before we move on, like because we did discuss, well, you mentioned it kind of the relationship between Catwoman and Batman. It is like it's historic. Like in the first issue of Batman, it's not just the Joker that's being introduced alongside Batman. Like Catwoman is in the first issue,
Mm-hmm.
so it really is the Bat and the Cat. So it goes all the way from the first issue, which is why I think it's so fitting that we're seeing her appear in this first film of what we're expecting to be somewhat of a franchise, right? Who knows if it's going to be a trilogy, if it's just going to end with two, if it's going to be whatever. But I know they're planning to do already like another film for sure.
I think
Um,
before we move forward into the Bat and the Cat, I think I just want to kind of bring up when it comes down to the Holly Berry version of Catwoman. I'm sorry, this is my last little tidbit on it. I don't think she even yeah, she wasn't even playing Selena Kyle. Like her character's name was like I just looked it up, Patience Phillips, you know. So it was just
oh,
someone who was completely different and of course unrelated. So I'm just going to say this woman was
she was
like
a
a
Catwoman.
Catwoman, like not the Catwoman in the DC universe, you know.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Shows This just showcases that we didn't watch that one in
Yeah.
particular.
Mhm.
But and before we just kind of dive into the trailer itself, ready? This is why I was really excited to talk about Catwoman.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ready. I've been waiting for
I'm
weeks to
ready.
show you guys
I'm
this.
ready. Oh snap!
Look,
Look
I
at
got
that.
the Catwoman Funko Pop, and I have another one on the way.
And it looks like, cause I have
um,
the image of Tessa right here in her her Catwoman suit. So yeah, looks just like it.
Zoe Kravitz, not Tessa
Oh, Zoe Kravitz. My bad, not Tessa. I wish it was Tessa, but you know Zoe,
They're both
whatever.
amazing. They're both amazing. I freaking love them both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two on the way. I have another one on the way actually. So the super cool thing that Funko and just like HBO Max Funko, reach out to us. We love you.
Holler,
We will.
holler.
We but I did order two. So I had this one that I ordered directly from the Funko Pop store,
Mhm.
and then the other one is from the Funko Pop Amazon store. And the reason I got two is because it's kind of like you don't know which one you're getting. So you don't know if you're gonna get the Funko with like the cowl
Mhm.
or if you're gonna get the one without it. And so I thought that was pretty cool. You have to be in it to win it, which is why I had two on the way. This is the one obviously with the cowl. So I either get the other one that doesn't have it, or you guys will do like our first giveaway or something like that.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
it'll
I
be
like that. I
fun.
like that. So, do you want to just dive right in?
Yes, I got my notes.
Okay,
I'm shifting to paper on this one.
let's do it.
Super excited. All right. So particularly the trailer that I was most gravitated by is the one that's kind of titled "The Bat and the Cat," just because I feel, well, one, honestly, I think it's because we got the most of Selena Kyle, and I think that Zoe Kravitz just looks so amazing. Like her casting as Selena Kyle, Catwoman, is, I think, in my eyes, like the best casting that there's ever been. I think it's just freaking amazing, and I'm excited more than seeing Batman. Like I'm going to see Catwoman.
Right.
But in this trailer, we kind of get a lot, and it gives us a little bit of an outline of, not just like a glimpse of the cinematography, the gothic type style, the broodiness that we are going to definitely have in this film, which alone is super exciting. But we kind of get an idea of maybe what the Riddler's intentions are based off, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of conversation about um, the Wayne family's involvement in the corruption of Gotham,
Mm.
right? And he says a lot of things like the Riddler in regards to that. He evidently knows that Batman and Bruce Wayne are the same person.
Mhm.
And I've seen some theories that in this rendition, the Riddler might actually be a family member of the Waynes, which is why he, one, knows
Who
the
he
Wayne's
is? Right.
involvement.
Right.
Yeah, first like the Wayne's involvement in the corruption, and is like keen enough to know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Kind of going back to like your gripe at the 1989 film Batman,
Mhm.
where like she just like finds out with like just apparently amazing intuition. This would give a little bit more foundation for him to understand who Batman is, because he's a little bit more closely related to the family. If say he was part of the family or something like that,
Right.
right? But it gives some indication of potentially an injustice that like this Riddler had maybe like received from the Wayne family or as a result of something the Wayne family did,
Mhm.
which is why he now has like somewhat of an agenda, at Gotham. And on top of that, because he calls out Batman, right? I think it's like in the first trailer, he's like, I want the bat, or like
Right.
he sends like a bunch of things to the Batman, like GCPD, and then in turn giving it to the Batman.
Mhm.
So if anything, it's because he already knows Batman is Bruce Wayne and he really is trying to get at Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
already I feel like that trailer gave us a lot. It gave us a lot.
I'm just kind of looking at the cast and like the actor Paul Dano, he's the one that's actually playing the Riddler, and uh he I don't want to say is typecast, but he plays the weird role well. Like a lot of the movies that he's in, he's always playing like a weird off putting character, but he does a good job playing these characters. And as far as from the glimpse of the Riddler that we've seen in the trailer and the quote unquote costume and mask that he's wearing, he's not the Riddler of Jim Carrey, to like just to compare, because that Riddler was a little bit more out here, a little bit more flamboyant, and like it came down to the point to where Jim Carrey was wearing a whole bunch of ridiculous tights, and I don't even know where that went in that movie, but here we're getting a Riddler to where there are no jokes. Like here's a prediction: there are gonna be zero jokes from the Riddler that's gonna like make us laugh. He's gonna do the weird type of scary stuff to where it's like you should fear the Riddler just like you should fear Heath Ledger or Walking Phoenix's Joker.
Oh yeah, and I definitely get that feel. And just kind of referring to like there, no jokes, but definitely, I mean, riddles. I mean,
Oh,
the
Riddler
riddles
for
that we
sure,
expect from the
definitely
Riddler, but
right.
they take a completely different turn than what we saw for sure from Jim Carrey's. And kind of on the line of like the riddles, there's one of the what does he say? Oh, he has a riddle where he's referring to like justice or injustice, and in referencing like the GCPD and like all of the other like Batman and things like that, the Wayne family.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what kind of gives me the feel that this is kind of like a revenge or like what no, I guess just revenge. Like I think he's trying to correct an injustice that the Wayne family essentially created,
Yeah.
but also Alfred knows because like I think this if I'm not forgetting or remembering correctly, this is a trailer where Alfred is like being confronted by Bruce in a way where it's like he knew all along some information.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got to be something like that.
Okay.
It's got to be. And I was going to mention something that this film or this trailer reminded me of. Um, there's a scene where I think it's Bruce walking through like a crowd, and I think this crowd is like holding a bunch of signs with like the Riddler emblem and just a bunch of things like lies, lies, lies.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like the Riddler has like a form of a following from what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever the Riddler is essentially promoting, like the common people of Gotham are responding to. And this reminds me of this comic called I think it's called The White Knight. It's really really good. It's a good I love Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn has a really cool involvement in it that I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically a Joker Batman storyline, and the Joker essentially cures himself to prove that Batman is actually what's wrong with Gotham. And um Joker, who's no longer the Joker, he's a I can't remember off the top of my head his like real name. It's the same name that they use in the Michael Keaton Batman
Mm-hmm.
for the Joker, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
But he is basically saving Gotham, and he's really like calling to the lower class that very often gets kind of kicked to the side by the elites of Gotham, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. Like he has a really huge following. Like they are right behind this like cured Joker. And all of the actions that Batman does to, in essence, like get rid of this cured Joker
Mm-hmm.
it is actually proving his point that Batman is kind of what's wrong with
Well,
Gotham.
I think
And
if
so
anything, like just you saying that, that is the common theme of Gotham City. The elites kind of just stepping on the common people, you know, and
Yep.
they're always gonna have. I feel like that's what makes this story of Batman, even when it comes down to the comics, a great story. Just because, um, no matter what, you can twist it to the point to where I feel like that if that's the route that this Riddler is going, and if that's the route that Joker went on, that's the same route that I feel like Bane went on in The Dark Knight Rises, as far as how corrupt the city of Gotham City is, you know, and either Batman could turn out to be the savior, which he will be, but like say in this White Knight story, it sounds like he wanted to be the savior, but in actuality, like you said, he's proving the Joker right, and he could be what's wrong with Gotham City.
Yeah, like obviously, like Gotham corruption that goes like hand in hand, right? Like it basically sets the stage for someone like Batman to be the vigilante, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I drew those parallels because it does definitely feel like it's kind of like he's pinning. In this case, it's like specifically the Waynes, but if he knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne, it's kind of like he's saying Batman is at the source of like a lot of this corruption. So it's very similar. And on top of that, it's like it's the following, right? Because there's at least the way it seems in the trailer. Obviously, we haven't seen the movie yet. Like that
Right.
could mean completely different. But just based on the posters, like, it seems like there are people who are listening and who are definitely aligning with the Riddler's like promise or whatever he's proposing. So it's an interesting foundation for this first film.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, it's based in year two of Batman's career. So we're looking at like a much greener Batman than we've really seen. We saw a little bit in like the Batman Begins with like Christian Bale, but I think this is supposed to kind of tackle it in a much deeper sense. So I'm excited for all of it. I
Okay.
want all of it.
Okay. Um, I don't think I have anything else. I think outside of like the only thing I can think of in the trailer is I'm excited to see Colin Farrell play the Penguin, just because of this fat suit. You know, it's not like they're getting like Danny DeVito to play the Penguin and giving him a long nose, but they're actually like the makeup looks great. You know, just because if you know who he is, you know he's super in shape. He's not who he's being
This,
put
yeah.
out on the screen. So I'm excited to see that. And one actor I'm really excited to see is Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright is an amazing actor, and he's playing Commissioner Gordon in this movie. So I'm looking to see what his version of Commissioner Gordon is going to be.
That's exciting because Commissioner Gordon is like Alfred. Like he's a staple into supporting Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Like Alfred and Gordon are like his only friends. Like whether he wants to
Right.
admit it or not,
Right.
that's like his friends in the group, you
Besties.
know? Besties.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm sorry, have you seen the Harley Quinn animated series?
Mm-mm.
You got to see it. It is like just so
Mm.
funny. It is so funny. And I think it just plays like I mean it makes it very dramatic and it definitely makes like Batman like the butt of the joke a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
times, but I think it outlines the relationship between Gordon and Batman and Alfred and Batman like super well. Like to an extreme. It's almost like it's borderline what would I call it? Satire. It's good. You
Gotcha.
guys got to see it if you haven't seen it. It's really fun. But I don't know. I'm excited because this film's gonna be much more like grounded in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love something I loved about the costume design and in comparing it to some of the other Catwoman is that her cowl isn't specifically like cat ears. It's like it
It
looks
could be a
like there. I
beanie
just
or
happened
something
to
like that.
put yeah. I
Yeah.
just happened to put a beanie that resembles a soft cat like moment and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like it. It's like it's very rooted in like real, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as real as like a superhero movie can get, but it just feels like gritty. Like it feels very year two of someone's career as a vigilante, as a villain, whatever, you know?
Right.
It's cool. Like I like that because evidently when you compare that to the other Catwoman, like they're very much like costumes. Like this looks like gear. You know what I mean? Like what someone would intentionally use and to be a functional like cat burglar, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it's I love that. I love it. I love looking at like the costume designs of these things. So and I like that in Batman's it looks like the chess piece is I don't know if it's it looks like a warped bat
Mm-hmm.
versus like a stamped bat like logo.
Right.
Like it looks almost like it could be accidental the same way like the cat ears
Mm-hmm.
are. It's cool. Like I like the boundary that they're kind of like or the line that they're kind of walking with the designs of all of the costumes and everything. It just looks good. I really like it. And it matches the tone of the
Well,
film.
not even just like the costumes. Even let's talk about like the Batmobile itself. It's not a tank,
Absolutely.
you know. It's not like the because the Batmobile before, even when it came down to Michael Keaton's Batman, they were never like regular cars. They were like custom built to not even look like anything. They all just look like something you don't want to mess with. To where here, uh, this Batmobile, it looks like an actual car you would see, like an old school car, of course, like maybe something in the 60s or something like that. But it just looks like an old school car that is souped up as opposed to an actual tank. You know what I'm saying? So I like the look of it, and I feel like that kind of gives us a better feel for the times of where this movie is, you know, because I think I mentioned it to you before, not today, but like before that, this it doesn't look to be, of course, in the present. This looks to be a little bit more in the gothic style. So this could be like, let's say, quote unquote, I don't know, 1940s, 1950s, 60s or whatnot. This doesn't look like it's in the 2000s. It looks kind of like just almost on some New York, like back in the day, you know. It's that
I
type of gritty,
understand
you
that.
know. So
Yeah, yeah. See, in my eyes, I feel like it still exists in like this time period, but I think it's because of that like type of cinematography they're leaning on. It
mm-hmm.
definitely feels like those kinds of films. And now I'm wondering. I mean, I guess it could be like the way I'm looking at it now.
Right.
Like I that could be the case. Based I think on like the tech. I mean, no, we've seen films based in like earlier times, like 40s and 50s, that still are really like great showcases of technology. I
Mm-hmm.
was about to say like maybe it would still be present day time period just because I feel like maybe the technology component that I think is very much of a staple for Batman wouldn't look as or appear as like impressive, but they've done that before. So I wouldn't
Right.
be concerned. But I'm excited for either way.
Where was
And
random question? What time frame or what time period was the Joker put in?
um 90s? Hold on. Let's find out. Let's find out. Hold on. The joke. I'm trying to see. Feel free to fill blank with
Oh, my bad.
trivia.
I was waiting. All right, so trivia. So when it comes down to the Batman, I'm gonna freestyle something. I don't even know. I can't freestyle trivia like that. I'm terrible. I'm trash. I'm trash.
See, I do this all the time.
Oh man. Well,
That's right.
all
That's right.
trivia aside, I can just say that say this movie, I'm already gonna put up there just because I think if anything, whoever made this, whoever wrote and directed this, I feel like they know the history of Batman films, you know, and especially off of the success of Christian Bale, because I don't want to include the Ben Affleck of Batman vs Superman or the Justice League in that. I feel like you said, they're gonna go dark to where it's a similar feel of the Christian Bale story. So, being that is the case, I don't see how this movie can be bad. You know, I'm already if I were to predict something, I feel like this movie would get a super high score in Rotten Tomatoes. You know, whether if it's fans or critics or whatnot. So I'm really just I can't wait to see it. You know. Even though I'm gonna see it later than everybody else, I'm gonna be off the internet. Okay, I'm not gonna watch any memes or anything like that. I'm just going to, you know what? I think when I come back, I'm just gonna delete Instagram until I come back. Grace,
Until you can,
Grace,
yeah.
you're in charge of posting the post. Okay, cool, got it, great.
Speaking of posts, I created my first meme, guys, and I was really proud of it. It's the one with the Peacemaker and Vigilante plus like Michael Scott and Dwight. I looked at it for like an hour and I was like, this is the smartest thing that's ever been. I was so
Look at that.
happy. So happy. Check it out on IG, guys. I was super happy.
Yep.
No, I will definitely do that. No spoilers here. No spoilers. So no, I'm super excited. There was something I was gonna add on. Yeah, Matt Reeves is the director, and I think he also wrote the script. Like, I'm impressed just
Hmm.
based on what we saw, based on statements that have been made in like interviews and things. Like, this is we're seeing Batman before he really knows or has created what it means to be Batman. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it's such a vulnerable time, I think, for like a young vigilante, and I'm excited to see how it gets played out. I have high hopes, like significantly high hopes statistically speaking, and you've seen it here as we kind of talked about all the other like Batman adaptations, when they do this type of like story, which is much more genuine to how Batman was supposed to be, you know, told since the beginning, it it lands and we like it as an audience because this is the kind of Batman that we want. So I have super high
It's
hopes.
and it's good to see, like, just because, like you just said, this is a quote unquote young Batman, like, and just looking at Robert Pattinson in the pictures and in the trailer, he looks to be, let's say, at least in his 20s, right? Even though in real life we're the same age, he's 35, maybe even 36 right now, but when it comes down to it, he looks to be playing a younger version of the Batman. And Christian Bale, I think we only got young in Batman Begins, and I think the Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. This is where we get like an older version of the Batman, and especially like in Batman vs Superman, you get uh, Ben Affleck. He's playing an even older version of the Batman. So now we're kind of taking it back and seeing a young Batman. What you're saying is, if this is year two, then he's still technically learning, how to be the Dark Knight here, So,
Yes,
yeah.
and I'm excited. I think it's a good ground to get story, and I think that's all I got, like specific to the film predictions and such. I know this is supposed to also be not just like a Batman story, but also getting a good amount of like Catwoman storyline, which I'm really excited about.
No,
Like, we're not just
don't do
seeing
it. Don't do
Zoe
it.
Kravitz. Shut up. We're not just seeing Zoe Kravitz play like, like the ditzy side character or just like a support. Like, it seems like she's gonna play a big role
Hmm.
in whatever Batman's objective is here. Like, she's very involved, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm excited. I'm really
Oh, I
excited
was
about
just
it.
saying don't do it because I know earlier this week you posted your excitement of HBO possibly saying there's going to be
Oh
a
yes.
series, a Catwoman
Okay.
series. But I'm saying don't do it just because, say, with that, right? I know we're venturing off from the movie and we're talking about the series, but I think that it's going to now come off as now HBO is going to now just make series about anything and everything, and they may not even be connected to the rest of the universe. Now is this like a separate universe to where if this series is just going to be connected to the movie, and then if there's going to be sequels to the movies, it's all like a continuation within the series. So I don't know what to think when it comes down to that idea.
See, I don't mind it getting messy as long as it's kind of like Peacemaker. It's like we understand it's obviously a sequel to, or not sequel, but it's an like a shoot off of Suicide Squad,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it's like created, there's a clear definition that it's also connected to the greater DCEU.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all I need for projects. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because I don't want it to be restricted where it's like great projects and great stories aren't being told because it has to be like completely confined within connecting to the greater DCEU. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm cool with it. I just want to see more Zoe Kravitz. I don't mind however it happens. Like, let's do it in a film. Let's make you happy and not during the series where it can get kind of confusing
Well,
with the
and
other
and
series.
it's not even
I
like
want to
just
see
saying, like,
more.
I know it's not going to be connected to the DCEU, but then again, it's just more so now Warner Brothers. If that is the case, if they are serious about it, then they are creating another universe from the universe that they're trying to revamp, because we already know how fragile the DCEU is, because it started off on a low, then it's high, and then this year again is going to be the biggest year as far as competing with
Yes,
Marvel when it comes down to DC and its movies. So they're they
I
are
get
they
it.
they are in a rebuilding phase, and it wouldn't make sense to me to do another series, which could be great. That if Zoe gets it, awesome. But let's focus on continuing to build this universe over here before we even make this multiverse, and focus on building another universe over here of the Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz universe. That's all I'm saying.
I see that point. No, no, I see that point because it's not like the DCEU has, or just DC in general has built their credibility for being able to manage all these films in a great way.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like
right.
they that yeah, I so see the point you're saying now. Yeah, like if they kind of spread themselves out too thin and get too ambitious, that's like another failed Justice League kind
Right,
of
right,
attempt. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
I get it. I get your point for
That's
sure.
all I'm
Like
saying. I'm
maybe
not trying to hate. I'm really not, but I'm just like, let's fix this over here first before we even do that over there.
And I think this is going to be the year to really test that because I think if these films, I mean, based on the trailers, based on what we've seen with like fandom and all of that, like this is going to be a lit year, and I'm excited with all of I think the learning opportunities that they've had in the past with their projects. Like I really feel like they're trying to amend all of that. And it looks like, I mean, based on what we've seen with Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, like I feel like they're getting their rhythm, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for
Mm-hmm.
DC. And I think after this year, it'll be a much better tell to see if they can handle like multiple different stories and franchises that don't necessarily need to connect, but are just being produced around the same
Right.
time. So I guess we'll see. I guess this is the year to test the waters.
Yeah. You're tested, DC. You're for sure tested with
We're
not only
watching.
me but everybody. So yeah. But I'm excited. I'm excited not only for the Batman, but just for DC in general. I hope it all makes sense in the end. Yeah, and I think that's all I got.
Oh, okay. So, all right. I think we're all prepared
All
to go
right.
into watching Batman.
So as far as next week is concerned, I know for sure. Of course, I will be missing missing the movie premiere, but who knows? I may convince the people that I'm going to visit. Be like, hey guys, you want to go see a movie? Who knows?
Just buy the
But
tickets. Just buy the tickets for
but
them.
but all in all, when I do eventually see it, then Grace and I, we will have our review. We will discuss the schedule and let you know when the review will be. And who knows? It may be a double feature because I think by the time I come back, right? By that time, um, episodes maybe episodes 1 and 2 of Moon Knight come out, or even if it's just the first episodes, we'll review both the Batman and the first episode. But who knows? I gotta check the schedule with not only DC but Disney Plus and see where it all lines up. But we will post it on our Instagram. Again, shout out to the new follower. Follow us on Instagram at the Comic Cinematic Universe. And again, thank you, Jesse, for tuning in. Your input is always appreciated. And Grace, I'm gonna leave this closeout to you. You got this. Close us out.
This is the punishment for me making you do trivia.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
okay. Guys, super excited for the Batman. Thank you so much for staying tuned for this episode where we talked about all the different faces of Batman. I hope you guys had a great time. I know we did, and we will catch you on the next
All
one.
right.
Have a good weekend,
Yep.
guys.
All right. Later, guys.
I did good.
You sure did.